There are times when you look at your pantry and it doesn't seem that messy, but it still makes you tired. You've already cleaned it, rearranged it, and yet a few days later, everything feels chaotic again and you don't understand what you did wrong. That feeling quietly turns into self-blame. Maybe you're lazy, maybe you lack discipline, maybe you're just bad at organizing. But the truth is, your pantry isn't messy because you didn't try hard enough. It's messy because you're handling it in a way that makes the clutter come back. This video isn't about making your pantry look pretty or buying more containers. It's about how to declutter your pantry so it's actually done, works in real daily life, and doesn't force you to start over again. If all you want is a pantry that causes less mental load and stays manageable for longer, keep watching. There were countless times I stood in front of my pantry, hesitant to start cleaning, not because it was a disaster, but because it wasn't bad enough to force action. It was just messy enough to make me feel exhausted every time I opened the door. I would push things aside, straighten a few items, and tell myself I'll deal with this later, but later never came. Every time I thought about decluttering, fear would creep in. If I take everything out, it's going to be chaotic. What if I don't have the energy to finish? I avoided starting, telling myself I was busy, that the timing wasn't right, that it wasn't that bad. But the truth was, I was afraid of making things worse. The turning point came when I realized I was trying to declutter without allowing it to get messy. I wanted to improve without experiencing any chaos. And I finally understood that approach doesn't work. The first time I actually started, I hesitated, feeling tense, like I was about to create a bigger problem. The counter quickly filled with boxes, bags, expired items, and things I had forgotten about. At that moment, I wondered if I had made a mistake. But that panic wasn't failure. It was just discomfort, my brain reacting to disorder. I had been treating that discomfort as a signal to stop, when in reality it was just part of the process. Once I accepted that, the pressure eased. I told myself, it's okay for this to be messy right now. That simple shift made all the difference. I didn't need to be fast or perfect. I just needed to keep going. This was the second realization: mess during decluttering isn't the enemy, avoiding it is. The more I allowed the pantry to stay messy, the clearer my decisions became. Items I had been moving around for months suddenly felt obvious. Some things didn't belong in the pantry at all. Some were expired, hidden away. Others I had kept simply because I didn't want to deal with them. Once everything was out in the open, indecision had nowhere to hide. What surprised me most was how much energy I saved by not trying to control the mess. I had been trying to do two things at once: declutter and make things look acceptable. Once I dropped the second job, the first felt manageable. I also noticed the panic I expected never really grew. Yes, the pantry looked worse for a while, but nothing bad happened. The house didn't fall apart. I didn't lose control. I finished. And when I put things back, it didn't feel rushed or forced, it felt done. That's when I understood why my pantry kept becoming messy again, not because I lacked discipline, but because I never allowed the process to fully complete. I kept interrupting it out of fear. If this resonates with you, I want to say clearly, you're not lazy. You're not bad at organizing. You're tired. You're protecting yourself from a level of chaos that feels bigger than your energy. And that makes sense. The solution isn't trying harder while staying comfortable. The solution is choosing a short period of discomfort so you don't have to carry that low-level stress every day. Letting your pantry be messy for a moment isn't failure. It's the gateway to finishing. Once you accept that, everything else becomes much easier. After I allowed my pantry to be messy during the cleaning process, I thought the hardest part was over. But almost immediately, I slipped into the same pattern I had for years, cleaning without truly tackling the clutter. I told myself I was being efficient by cleaning shelf by shelf, wiping around items, and moving things around, but deep down I knew it wasn't going to work. A few days later, the pantry felt heavy again. That's when I stopped and really looked at what I was doing. I wasn't cleaning the pantry, I was avoiding it. I was working around the mess instead of dealing with it. That was my first mental break. Half cleaning didn't save time. It only guaranteed I would have to do it again later. The problem wasn't that the clutter was too difficult to handle, it was that I kept avoiding it. Once I committed to taking everything out, the process shifted. At first, the pantry felt empty and chaotic, but that discomfort was necessary for a true reset. With everything out, I could see clearly. Items that didn't belong in the pantry, expired goods, and things I had kept out of habit were suddenly obvious. The second breakthrough came when I realized that by only tackling part of the clutter, I was making decisions with incomplete information. The items I didn't deal with didn't disappear, they just waited. Over time, they rebuilt the clutter I thought I had already dealt with. The third breakthrough came when I understood why half cleaning always drained me. I was constantly switching between cleaning and avoiding. The back and forth was exhausting, and once I let go of the need for perfection, everything became easier. When I allowed the mess, it helped me move faster and decide with clarity. If you've ever wondered why your pantry looks fine right after cleaning but slowly becomes draining again, it's because you never truly reset the space. You're not lazy or bad at organizing, you're tired. You're protecting yourself from chaos by keeping things contained, but half cleaning comes at a cost. You don't need perfection. You just need to take everything out, make conscious decisions, and only put back what truly belongs. Once you experience the feeling of done, it's hard to go back to surface fixes. If you've been stuck cleaning the same pantry over and over, it's not because you're failing, it's because you've stopped halfway. And that's something you can change, starting with one clear decision to take everything out. After taking everything out of the pantry, I expected things to feel easier. Instead, I felt overwhelmed by the mental load. Suddenly, every item felt like a question: where should it go? Do I need it? What if I might use it later? The momentum I had built quickly turned into hesitation. I realized this was the moment where I always got stuck. I tried to plan the perfect system, thinking I needed to make the right decision for every item. But in doing so, I drained myself before finishing. The first breakthrough came when I recognized I wasn't tired from the physical task, but from overthinking. I was treating every item like a complex problem when most of them didn't deserve that much attention. I wasn't overthinking because I cared deeply. I was doing it because I was afraid of making the wrong choice. This fear showed up in small ways, like holding on to items just because deciding felt risky, or moving things around to delay making a decision. The more I delayed, the heavier everything felt. That's when I asked myself a new question: what's the most honest decision I can make right now? This was my second breakthrough. Decluttering isn't about making perfect decisions, it's about making clear ones. Once I embraced that everything sped up, I stopped trying to design the perfect pantry in my head and focused on what was true in my daily life. If I hadn't used something in a long time, it was obvious. If something was expired or duplicated, the decision was already made. I was surprised by how quickly my mind felt lighter once I simplified the decision-making. I wasn't rushing, but I wasn't stuck anymore either. I could keep moving forward without second-guessing. The third breakthrough came when I realized I had been treating decluttering like a test I could fail. I was stressing over low-risk decisions that didn't even matter in my day-to-day life. Overthinking wasn't protecting me, it was draining me. Once I let go of the need for perfection, my energy lasted longer, and for the first time I finished without feeling completely depleted. The pantry wasn't perfect, but it felt honest. Everything that stayed had a reason, and everything that left no longer took up space in my mind. If you've ever felt mentally exhausted halfway through decluttering, this is often why. Not because you're incapable, but because you're overthinking. When you treat every item like a debate, the process becomes overwhelming. If decision fatigue hits hard, it's not indecision, it's exhaustion. You don't need to predict your future self or justify every item. You just need to make honest decisions based on your current life. Decluttering is possible when you stop asking complicated questions and start allowing simple answers. Simple isn't careless, it's sustainable. If you've been stuck, pause here. You're not failing. You're just overthinking while running on empty. This is something you can change one clear decision at a time. After I stopped overthinking my decisions, I thought decluttering would be easier, but I quickly realized I was moving too slowly. At first, I told myself I was being careful and intentional, but the longer I paused between decisions, the more momentum I lost. I started leaving things half-finished, promising to come back later, yet later never came. The first breakthrough came when I realized my energy was draining because I was letting too much time pass between actions. The longer I hesitated, the heavier everything felt. The space between decisions filled with doubt and fatigue. I discovered that slowing down too much gave my brain time to interfere, replaying old thoughts like, what if I need this? What if I regret this? I realized that speed had been protecting me all along. This was the second mental breakthrough. Moving faster didn't mean being careless. It made me more decisive. Once I allowed myself to move more quickly, I felt calmer, more focused, and less stressed. The faster rhythm created a flow that made decluttering feel easier. The third breakthrough came when I understood why I had always associated speed with burnout. In the past, I moved fast because I wanted to escape the mess. But this time, moving intentionally helped me stay present and avoid burnout. I noticed that when I kept moving, I didn't have time to second-guess myself. I trusted the decisions I had already made and finished before my energy ran out. Decluttering isn't just about what decisions you make, but how quickly you move through them. When you slow down too much, especially when tired, the task expands to fill all your mental space. If you've ever wondered why a simple decluttering session became exhausting, it's likely because you stop too often. This isn't about rushing, it's about respecting your energy. When you have momentum, use it. That's often the difference between finishing and abandoning the process halfway. If moving faster feels uncomfortable, it may be because you associate decluttering with pressure and exhaustion. So your instinct is to slow down to protect yourself. That instinct makes sense. You're not lazy, you're tired. But going too slowly can drain you just as much as rushing. Moving with steady speed gives you the power to finish. And completion brings relief. You don't need hours or perfect conditions. You just need enough momentum to carry you through. When you move faster than your doubts, your confidence grows. If you've been stuck halfway through decluttering more times than you can count, try noticing your pace, not to judge, but to understand it. Sometimes the shift that changes everything isn't what you're deciding, but how quickly you allow yourself to decide. After I finished putting everything back into the pantry, I expected the relief to last. And for a while it did. The shelves looked calmer, everything had a place, and I felt like I had finally solved the problem. But about a week or two later, something familiar started happening again. Not full chaos, just small moments of friction that I couldn't ignore. I noticed myself hesitating every time I reached for something. I had to bend down too often, stretch too high, or move other items out of the way just to grab what I needed. Slowly, without really noticing, I started leaving things out instead of putting them back. On the counter, on the table, anywhere that felt easier in the moment. That was when I realized the pantry wasn't failing because it wasn't organized. It was failing because it didn't match how I actually lived. That was the first mental break. I had organized everything by category instead of by use. Grains with grains, snacks with snacks, canned goods together. It looked logical and neat, but it didn't fit my daily rhythm. The things I used every single day were mixed in with things I touched once a month, and that mismatch created constant resistance. Every extra step, every awkward reach, every small inconvenience became a reason not to put things back properly. Clutter doesn't need a big trigger to return. It only needs a little friction repeated often enough. Once I saw that, I stopped looking at labels and started paying attention to my habits. I noticed what I reached for without thinking. I noticed which items always ended up on the counter by the end of the day. I noticed what felt annoying to put away when I was tired. Those patterns told me far more than any organizing rule ever could. That led to the second mental break. A pantry doesn't need to be organized by logic. It needs to be organized by behavior. When I rearranged things based on how often I actually use them, the entire space started working differently. The items I reached for daily moved to eye level and arm's reach. Things I used occasionally went higher or lower. Bulk items and backups were grouped separately, so they didn't interrupt my everyday flow. Nothing about this looked dramatic, but it felt dramatically easier. Putting things away stopped requiring effort. I didn't have to think or plan or adjust. My hands naturally went where things belonged. The pantry stopped asking me to be disciplined and started supporting me instead. That change mattered more than how neat it looked. The third mental break came when I understood why this mattered so much. Clutter doesn't come back because you forget how to organize. It comes back because your system demands too much of you on tired days. If your pantry only works when you're focused, motivated, and careful, it won't survive real life. Ease is not a bonus, it's a requirement. If your pantry keeps falling apart, it doesn't mean you lack discipline. It means your setup is asking more from you than you realistically have to give. You're not messy, you're tired. Organizing by how often you use things isn't about perfection. It's about removing unnecessary decisions from your day and making the easiest choice also the right one. You don't need to redo everything or buy new containers. You just need to notice what you use most and move it closer to where your hands already go. That small shift can remove a surprising amount of daily friction. And when your pantry finally matches your real life, instead of an ideal version of it staying organized, stops feeling like work, that's when the clutter actually stays away. After organizing my pantry based on how often I use things, it finally felt calm. Everything had a place, and putting things back didn't take effort. For the first time, the pantry felt like it was working with me. But then I almost made a mistake that would have undone everything. I started filling the empty space. At first, it felt satisfying. I moved things closer together and told myself it looked cleaner. But something felt off. That's when I realized a pantry that only works when it's completely full doesn't actually work. I had been treating empty space like wasted space, when in fact it was the most important part of the system. Empty space wasn't a failure, it was capacity. The second breakthrough came when I realized clutter doesn't return because you bring too much in, it comes back because there's nowhere for new things to go. So I started intentionally leaving gaps. It felt uncomfortable at first, but I soon noticed how much calmer the pantry stayed. New items had a place to pause, and I didn't have to rearrange everything just to fit something new. The third breakthrough was understanding why I always felt like I was redoing my pantry. It wasn't that I was bad at organizing, but that I had been designing systems with no room for flexibility. Homes aren't static. Needs and groceries change. A system with no space to absorb changes will always lead to clutter. Leaving space on purpose made the pantry adapt instead of breaking when life happened. If your pantry looks great one day and chaotic the next, it's likely because your system didn't allow for flexibility. If leaving empty space makes you uncomfortable, it doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It's often because we're taught that full shelves are the mark of success. In reality, empty space keeps things functional. You don't need a lot of empty space, but you need enough so new items don't immediately create stress. Even a small gap can make a big difference. Leaving space isn't about doing less. It's about planning for reality. It's acknowledging that your home needs room to adjust without requiring constant attention. When you stop trying to fill every inch, your pantry can handle changes without falling apart. If organizing always feels like a temporary fix, it's not your fault, it's the design. And you can change that by simply letting your space breathe. After leaving space on purpose, my pantry finally stopped feeling fragile. It could handle small changes without falling apart. For a while, things stayed calm. But then I noticed a new problem: what happened after groceries came into the house. I'd come home tired, unload quickly, and put most things back where they belonged. But a few items, new snacks, extra boxes, Things I wasn't sure about ended up wherever there was space. I promised myself I'd sort them later, but that later pile became the start of new clutter. The first breakthrough came when I realized the pantry wasn't getting messy because I was careless. It was getting messy because new items had no place to land. Every time something new entered it, created a small decision I didn't have the energy to make. So I postponed it. And postponed decisions don't disappear, they pile up. I had spent so much time fixing how things lived inside the pantry that I missed how things were entering it. This was the second breakthrough. Decluttering fails not during organizing, but during intake. Once I saw that the solution was simple. New items didn't need to be fully decided on immediately. They just needed a temporary home, a clear space where things could land without disrupting the rest of the pantry. When I created a small intake zone, everything shifted. New groceries, snacks, and items I wasn't ready to sort yet went there first. This space wasn't about storage, it was about pausing. What surprised me was how much pressure that removed. I no longer had to decide everything immediately. The pantry stopped demanding instant clarity from me. The third breakthrough came when I realized why this mattered so much. Most clutter doesn't come from indecision, it comes from timing. We try to make decisions when we're hungry, rushed, or exhausted. A temporary home respects that. Instead of scattering new items around, they waited in one place. When I had time and energy, I could integrate them properly. And if I didn't, at least they weren't quietly disrupting everything else. This small change made the pantry stay organized longer. Now new things didn't sneak in and break the system. They were contained, visible, manageable. If your pantry keeps unraveling, even though you're doing everything right, this could be why. Not because your system is bad, but because there's no buffer for new items. I want to make something clear: if the idea of needing a temporary zone feels like extra work, it's not. It removes pressure at the most vulnerable moment. You're not messy because things pile up after grocery runs. You're tired. You're human. You're trying to make decisions when your energy is already spent. A temporary home gives you permission to delay without losing control. You don't need a big area or special containers. It can be one shelf, one bin, or even a corner. What matters is that new items know where to go even before you know where they belong. When you stop expecting yourself to handle everything perfectly, your system becomes more forgiving, and forgiving systems last longer. If you've been blaming yourself for clutter that keeps coming back, take a breath. This isn't about discipline, it's about timing and support. When your pantry has a place for new items, it stops being vulnerable. And when your system supports your tired moments, staying organized becomes something you can actually maintain. The more I paid attention, the more I realized that my pantry wasn't exhausting because it was messy, but because I kept trying to hold it together when I was already tired. Once I allowed myself to finish the process properly, make quicker decisions, and organize in a way that actually fit my daily life, the space started to feel lighter and easier to use. If you want to begin, you don't need to redo everything at once. One small step is enough. Leave a little space instead of filling every shelf, give new items a temporary place, or allow the pantry to be messy while you're in the middle of cleaning. And if your pantry has been making you feel drained, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not lazy, you're just tired. You don't need a perfect pantry, only one that doesn't ask you to push yourself harder every single day.